What's up, Lucky Gamers? It's Lucky Lux, and today we're going to be talking about the Priest Raid tier list. If you guys joined the live stream, it was a interesting but fun time. 4 hours of literally debating all of these units. So this is going to be honestly an official community tier list. But it was fun. We talked about a lot. So if you guys can check out the live stream, it is on my channel. If you want to hear some of the reasoning, I'll be doing like a brief kind of summary. But we went into depth on a lot of characters. If you guys like this video, please hit the like button, comment down below what you guys think about the tier list, and please subscribe to the channel. Also hit the bell notification that you guys know when I live stream, that way you know when I upload videos, and please keep subscribing. I am like literally a few subscribers away from 1,300 and just getting closer and closer to my goal of hopefully trying to hit 10,000 at the end of the year. I appreciate all you guys' support. I appreciate all the input that everybody gave on the live stream. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this video. Alright, so regarding the tier list, we did change things up, and down here in the healers, tank supports, it's a little confusing, but not really, because it's really hard to rank a lot of these students, because some of them you need more than others, and some of them there would be S tier all the time, and some of them like would never be. It was really hard to decide, but pretty much I'm just going to be going over the healer tank supports, because there are units that, like, if you don't have one built up, then one would be better than the other. So it really depends on what you have leveled up. But all of these characters here are mostly important when it comes to healers, like what I have here on this like top row, right? This bottom row is like literally kind of if you need it, but I'll explain that anyways. So Karin, she's just going to be used for attack percent. That's about it. You don't want to use her EX skill. So like if you were leveling her to do anything other than a yellow raid, honestly, you just want to use her for her attack percent buff. That's all that she can really provide for you. Her EX skill just doesn't do enough in the raid to justify even using it. Hieronymous actually has a little bit more usefulness. If you don't like have enough blue, not blue damage, but red damage, and you need to just spread out to make a couple teams, Hieronymous is actually a good option to have. One, she's tanky. Two, she has some evasion, but mainly she has the cost recovery that she can give your team and the crit damage defense reduction that she can put onto the boss. That's really strong, especially if you're trying to spread out your teams. You don't have enough defense reduction people. She could be another unit for you for that. All these tanks, pretty much use them if you need them. I'm just gonna summarize them all together. I'm not gonna say what tank is better than the other, because honestly, like, you're just using whatever tank that you have. So whoever you have is the best tank. Just use them, honestly. Some of these tanks, like Haruka and Emi, can actually do explosive damage. Some of the others are a little bit tanky, but pretty much just use them, you know, at your own discretion. Now for the healers, pretty much it depends on your investment for the healers, right? So like Ayane, she gives you HP buff, she gives you the crit resistance, she gives you the AoE heal. Of course, she is good and decent to use. Just know that she's a little bit AoE. She's an AoE healer. Her EX costs a little bit, but she also gives you other stats and other than just healing. But she doesn't have like a passive heal, kind of like Serena does, right? And she doesn't give you any offensive stats, more so for survivability. Hanako, she's going to give you extra healing on, like, if you paired her with another healer, and then she gives you the AoE heal over time. Again, it's a little expensive, but if you need to use it, you could probably put it on one character and use it on the lantern itself to kind of get a little bit double usage out of it for it being so expensive, right? Chinatsu, we talked about her. So if you fully invest into her and you level up her equipment, and you level up her EX skill at least to 3, she can full heal the lantern. It's just, it is a little bit of investment into her. Also, you're giving up a lot of skill points on it, so you have to kind of make sure that your rotation is made around that. And she literally doesn't do anything really for you other than just full healing the lantern. But like, that could be good for you, because then you could just only need one healer versus 2 healers, especially if you're trying to spread out and have multiple teams, if you just don't quite have the damage. Right? And then the debuff, I think we talked about it. She also can, at level 3, she can remove the debuff, so that is helpful as well, but again, it's a little bit expensive. Fuka, she's another unit that you can use if you invest into her. She'll give you the full team heal, but I don't believe it works on the lantern. I can't remember us talking about it because everybody has to move to it, and if you drop it on the lantern, it might proc it. But then I don't know, that just might. I mean, it just costs a lot. That's the only thing with it. But if she's your only healer and you have her 5-star because you can get her shards, and that's all right. But I can't quite remember on her. But like, if you have her, use her. I'm not saying at all don't use her, but like, you still need a healer, right? Hana, she's actually a healer that can give you offensive stats with the crit damage. And then also she can increase the defense of anybody who gets low HP. And then her EX skill, actually, I actually used her the last time I fought Priest. Works really well because depending on when you proc it, it can multi-proc the lantern because it's a heal over time and it lasts pretty long. The more you heal it, the quicker you can get it leveled up. And by the time it comes back down, she could probably get one good little heal on it as well. Serena, she's probably most people's, like, other than Koharu's, I would say most requested healer, because she actually has a really, really cheap heal that you can just drop on top of the lantern, being it's only 2 EX skill cost, and you could still have like enough skill cost to use for actual combat, and then she can heal your people without actually having to use the EX skill. So that's why she's kind of like one of the healers that you really want to go with when you're talking about a special unit, right? Ocarie, we have her here because she gets the defense reduction with only being a 2 cost. Even though we're not really using her for damage, she's still kind of a little bit tanky. She can survive. We don't have to worry about healing her, but we're literally only using her for the defense reduction. We're also talking about like her with some other units. The defense reduction kind of gets a little you get some diminishing returns, but we'll talk about that more so on another unit. But just know that Akane, she's going to be your defense reduction if you don't have like Akane, Azaza or S Azaza. You do want to bring Akane, that way she can help boost your damage. You might think that since you're not having a damage character, instead of her, you'll get way less DPS. But when you see that when you fully max out her EX skill, the amount of defense shred that she provides will boost your team's damage significantly. Hibiki, she's literally only here for the crit damage. And then she does some explosive damage, but you're really not wanting to use her EX skill just for the cost. Like, it can do some damage, but I feel like you could use some other units. Like again, she can do damage, but it's like, why use hers when you have other people's? It's mainly going for like her normal skill, and the sub skill is what I would specifically have leveled up for this. If you don't have any other strong reds and she's one of your strongest because you level her up for like PvP or something like that, then you can use her EX skill. But again, like mine is really weak, so I would just level up the normal skill and the sub skill. Kotama, she's here for attack percent buff. Honestly, so her EX skill and her sub skill are the main things you want to honestly level up for this, and I really don't see anything else to really focus on other than those two things. Koharu, she's really probably one of your best units to use because she is a on-field healer where she can do damage or she can heal everybody, and honestly, that's letting you get a special unit to use, so you could do like Hibiki and Kotama or anybody else, any combination. Just gives you more versatility on your team versus having to depend on having supports as the healers. But then again, that also means that she can die, so you do need to try to make sure that she's safe, and you need to keep up healing on her. So that's the only thing, is that you actually have a healer that could die, but you have a healer that can heal a lot and do some damage. All right, so that's pretty much the healers, tanks, and supports. Again, in this, it's like whatever you have, whatever works based off of what you have up here, right? Because these people are all going to be supporting pretty much what you have up here, and that's about where I place them. It just depends on how you have them leveled up. It's really, really hard to rank them. It's just like, if you have honestly these top, like this top row, if you have any of these and you're lacking any one, again, like I would focus on Serena and Hane if you have them. If you don't have them leveled up, then you can go with Chinatsu or Hanako or Ayane. And then these 4 here, you're leveling up to give you more damage. So level them up just accordingly if you have them. All right, so we're going to the next tier. This is if you have no one else. these are units where if you have nobody above leveled up, then you're going to use these units. Notica, she's literally here because like she does like a little bit of damage. She gives you accuracy buff, and that's about it. That's all I have to say. Honestly, if you're using her, you might as well put Shun on the team. That way you give everybody the extra cost recovery, and then you can just cycle skills. If you just don't have a lot of strong explosive units, you could possibly cycle the skills to get a little bit more of a damage buff. That's pretty much the only reason why you want to use her. Kirano, she's literally kind of useless. She does like a little bit of damage. If she's gonna be your waifu, you can use her, whatever. She gives she lowers like accuracy and everything like that from the boss, but that's not really as effective to use. But if you're trying to use her for damage, you can do that if you want. Same thing with Irie, like the movement speed debuff and the attack speed debuff. It's like, you can have it, but it's not really significant. There's just other units that you would rather have, honestly, on the squad, and she's just not it for you, honestly. Tsurugi, same thing with her being a mystic unit. She doesn't have, the DPS like reduction like with piercing units, but again, she's not a super strong option in this. Being like, even though she has a little bit of tanky and she has the attack speed, there's just better options for you to have, and that's pretty much the same thing with a lot of these blue units, right? Like Shiriko, she does AoE, it's not really spectacular in this. She doesn't have anything that breaks her, nothing like defense reduction. Eris or EXO costs way too much for her not to get a huge damage bonus in this. But again, if you have no one else, you can use her. She has her extra crit. Chisei, same thing. This is not an AoE. And then her burn is not going to do any significant damage. Asana, same thing. She's not going to really do anything for you. Her dodge, giving her the evasion and crit, it's like, it's nice to have if she's your max student. Like if you max these guys out from the last raid, pretty much, and you have them, you can use them if you're like lacking on red students. All right, and so Suzumi, even though she's a pretty cool unit, being that nothing can be stunned or CC'd or anything like that, she's a student that just honestly, her skills and nothing that she has does anything great. Her sub skill doesn't work with anything because you can't crowd control. Same thing with my girl Kayako, like she can't fear the boss. And so she doesn't get the extra damage buff when affecting anybody with the crowd control. So that kind of sucks. Izumi, she can't really do anything because she can't stun the boss. Again, she might be even a little tanky, but without being able to stun and hit multiple targets, she loses a lot, and there's just better units to use. Mashiro we have here because like you can get the crit damage buff to buff another explosive unit, but again, that's all that she's doing for you. People arguing that, she can be really, really good, but we kind of put her at the top of if you have no one else, because like she can kind of, do something for you if you like just have some of these units up here. But again, it's just something like you don't really need to have her. All right, so moving up to preference, we have Maki sitting down here. Maki, she doesn't really do any damage, being that she gets the reduction, but she can give the defense debuff, and you can have her as like an auto attacker, just providing the defense reduction. But again, she's not going to be putting up any high numbers, but if you have her maxed out, then she could possibly do something somewhat useful, but she's not going to be like, doing anything impressive. And then next, moving on to S-Hina. So with S-Hina, being that there's not any multiple targets, not like how she shined in Chitin, with it being one single target, even though she has a low EX skill cost, she's not going to be doing as much damage as she could possibly do. So that's kind of a little bit unfortunate, being that she shines so much. But, if you leveled her up for the last one, and if you do have her, it's your preference to use her. But again, it's not something that's be significant to anybody else up the list, honestly. Saya, we actually talked about Saya for a little bit. The reason why we don't have her down in healer tank support is because like she's gonna be kind of a odd spot because typically you never really use her. But if you do have her 5-star, you have her leveled up, she does give everybody the extra crit buff on her sub skill, and she does have a little bit of a poison. So if you have her EX skill leveled up and you have her geared out, she could possibly do something for you with her EX skill, even though it does cost a lot. It's a little bit of a risk to use, but hey, you can at least give everybody the crit buff, and that could help, especially if you use it in conjunction with Cherno, which is giving the crit damage, so everybody's critting So there's some team formations that you can use with Saya where she could kind of shine, right? So Harna, we have her here because if you were to level up her EX skill, get it down to 3, if you were to have her sub skill leveled up where she's doing more damage standing still, she could do some damage, but again, she's not going to be doing like anything super significant because you have to use her EX skill for her to really do any high damage, and then also you need to have her EX skill leveled up. So as in a character that we want to, she's not a character that we would really recommend leveling up for this and preparing for this because it's just too much investment for this raid. Now the previous raid, yes, she was amazing and she was a queen, and that's one of the reasons why we have her on here, because if you leveled her up for the Shirokuro raid, then she could possibly do a lot of damage for you if you don't have anything else, right? Izuna, same thing. She's a really good auto attacker. You don't have to use any of her extra skills, and then if you do have to cycle it, it's not too bad because it only costs 3. So with like minimum investment, she could do something decent, being that she doesn't get any damage reduction in here. And if you don't have any other better reds and you need to make multiple teams, she's a decent option to have, honestly. All right, so moving up to somewhat priority. These are people who, like, if you have them and you don't have anybody up the list, they're okay to use, but there's better options. This right here got a little messy. Honestly, these two got really messy when we were debating them. But anyway, so starting off with somewhat priority at the bottom, we have Mashiro, being that she has RNG on her EX skill. So you can't really guarantee damage out of her. Her sub skill is accuracy, and nobody's really like needing that. And then her normal skill, it like does, you know, some decent damage, but again, with having that RNG factor, it's just really hard to calculate her damage because like you have to max it out pretty much to get the extra 75% bump to do the extra damage. But when she does hit, she does decent, but again, it's like not something that you really want to bet on because it's just still, it's random, especially over the course of the long fight. So Izumi, we actually were a little bit nicer to her. We were kind of dogging her at first, but we actually looked at it and talked about it. So when you do level up her EX skill to, of course, 3, you get the attack speed buff, and she can keep herself alive. We actually talked about it, and she could be a decent auto attacker. Even with her EX skill being 3, you could cycle that pretty well. And she can, again, like I said, keep herself alive, so you don't have to worry about healing her. She's one less student to worry about. And so that can help you, especially if you have her max out. She could do some decent damage. Again, that just depends on you having her EX skill at 3, so you do have to invest into her. But if she's like one of your waifus, one of the students that you have, and you don't have anybody else leveled up and you have her 5-star, then hey, go for it. She would be a good option for you. Now, Hina, we have her here on somewhat priority. I know a lot of people are saying that in JP, she's a lot more useful for Insane and everything like that, but we're not quite there here in Global, so we had to kind of judge her a little bit differently. So she's a student that basically, if her EX skill comes up, it's a little bit unfortunate depending on the time it comes up because it might mess you up in your skill cycling. But as an auto attacker, we were talking about how she does a lot of decent damage with her auto attacks. And so if you just never use her EX skill, she could pump out some decent damage for you if you don't, again, have anyone else higher on the list. But again, like the reason why she's down is because her EX skill costs way too much and doesn't do enough damage to justify putting her any higher because it's literally 2 or 3 abilities from somebody else, and you're only using it for auto attack, so that's what kind of makes it a little bit shaky. Iori, she's a unit that with their EX skill, it's not something you really want to use because she's not quite what she was on Chitin because there's no AoE, but again, with her auto attacks, with her sub skill, she can do some decent damage, and that's pretty much where we have a couple of these characters right here as auto attackers because they, like with their EX skill, you really don't want to use it. But if you're just needing somebody to do some auto attacks, they could stack up some damage for you if you don't have anybody else. That's why we have them here on somewhat priority, is because like if you don't have anybody else, they're like somewhat good, especially for making multiple teams, right? All right, so we have young Shun here starting out on high priority. She's a really interesting unit because it really depends on how the game calculates her EX skill. Because if you look at it, her EX skill at level 5 ignores 44% defense. And so we weren't sure if it ignores it after the defense reduction from like Azaza or Akane or S Azaza, or if it like kind of adds on to it. So after their defense reduction, and it puts the boss like we put like hardcore around 1200 after having Azaza and S Azaza. Would it only ignore the 1200 defense, or will it, you know, ignore the full 2000, which it would ignore another 800 and hit the boss as if the boss only had 400 defense? We're not sure, so I'm gonna have to test that. We're gonna have to see. But also, she's a unit where like she would be really, really strong for you if you didn't have any defense reduction or you were needing another team, right? So let's say you put all of your defense people on the first team, like defense reducing people on the first team, then Young Shun really doesn't need them because she's a character who we're not sure, she might give diminishing returns with having all that defense reduction. So it might be best to just have her on her own team to where you could just build a team around her with people who have lower skills, because with her sub skill, you need to use her skill at least twice, because the first one reduces her attack. But then after 20 seconds, pretty much you'll have the attack buff, and then that one will hit really hard. So she's a unit that's not quite easy to use because you have to cycle really quickly to get her EX skill up and to time it right. And you have to get a specific rotation for that to make sure when the boss is in a groggy state, you have the attack buff and not the attack debuff. And yeah, but after I test it, we can see with the defense reduction and with basically her being defense penetration, how that works, or if it's completely just bad together. So we put her at the bottom high priority because, like, again, she's really, really good. If you don't have any defense reducing students, she can do a lot of damage. But you have to literally make a team around her, and the rotations for her could get a little bit messy, and it's a little confusing. So, yeah. But we did talk about her, and she is a unit that we do believe can be good for your second team. All right, so S Azaza, we have her here because of her defense reduction, and it can be used with Azaza. You know, she's a unit who can honestly put out a lot of damage. I was a little bit just like on her, but the community, they spoke. They're like, nah, bro, at least put her in the high priority. Probably not over, you know, any of these units, which, you know, some people agree, some people disagree, but we pretty much settled on putting her right here because if you have her invested, though, you have to have her really hardcore invested for it to be really worth it over a red unit. But if you do and you have Azaza, then they can work together. If you really don't have those two, we were kind of alluding to the fact that it's just not as much of a usefulness to use her. But if you have both Azazas, they could work really well together. So Aru, we talked about Aru, and she's a unit that, like, you really don't want to use her EX skill, but if you have nobody else, you can use her EX skill because the extra damage proc that you get also hits the boss. So it's like hitting for like 1000% of attack hit. And she also has crit rate and crit damage on her other skills. So she could pump out a lot of damage. But again, there's other units that can do more. But if you have a 5-star, you know, Aru that you probably use for kiting, right, then this would be a good unit for you. If you have her fully invested, she could pump out a lot of damage for you, even on a single target unit. All right, so Shun is a unit that we kind of talked about. We had a huge debate on Shun. Like, it was a really big debate. So we were kind of debating if we would even put Shun up here because it depends on the difficulty of the raid that you're doing. If you're doing like extreme or anything that would come higher in the future, it's a little bit harder. But if you're doing like a speed run, then of course like Shun will be a lot better because of the skill cost that she gives you. But we were also talking about the fact that if you use her EX skill, would it be worth it? Would it not be worth it? But we kind of came to the conclusion that if like you use the EX skill, it's not the worst thing because it actually gives her some crit, it gives her a little bit of extra damage, and it's a little bit, it's not as much of a punishment to use her EX skill as it would be to use like, you know, have to get Hina's out the way or something like that, because it's a buff and it's not like an active skill or anything like that. So it's not like the worst thing to happen, and she gives you some skill costs, right? Of course, her sub skill doesn't really work on this, and she's not as great as she was in Chitin. but we still put her up here because we assume that most people have her built up. And so if you're needing something extra for the team, if you're making multiple teams, then she would be a good option for you. So we have Ocarie up here. She's a decent, pretty much auto attacker, being that she can increase her attack a lot without you having to use her EX skill. And if you have her fully invested, it's usually good. She has some extra HP on her passive skill. So she'd be a decent unit to use. Again, try not to use her EX skill, but if you could get her buffs off, then she can pump out a lot of damage. And that pretty much concludes the high priority. This was probably the highest and most debated section right here. And honestly, Hina was too. But we finally got to a conclusion that everybody was able to agree on. So in highest priority, we have Shiriko. We have her here because basically you can cycle her skill quite frequently, being that it's only a 2 skill cost, so it's not the worst to have. So we're pretty much saying, like, if you used her with young Shun, it's not the worst because you could cycle those abilities really quickly. If you had like somebody else with quick skills, it's nice to use her. She puts out decent damage, especially if you have her fully invested, right? And then she can increase her attack speed. So she's not a bad unit to have, and it's not a punishment to use her EX skill, right? So that's pretty much what we have her up here. Now, Mutsuki, she's a unit that, honestly, in the Titan raid and in this raid, a lot of people rank her very high because of her mines and because of her EX skill, because her EX skill can pretty much hit at least 2 hits on the boss, and we were saying did about like 35,000 damage just with base, with her base damage, and then her mines does about like 45,000 damage just as base, not including gear. So she can do a significant amount of damage, especially if you can reposition the boss and you can get a really good clean run with Mutsuki. She can do a enormous amount of damage for you. So that's pretty much why we have her up here. I know some of you guys, if you haven't seen or heard that talked about, it's a little bit weird why we would have her so high, being a single target boss. But if you really see some people use Mutsuki at the high level, she does a lot of damage because she can do overlapping damage similar to Hibiki, and it gets a little insane. And she can do it. She can do her highest damage without even using her EX skill because of her mines. So she's another unit who you don't even have to use the EX skill, and she can pump out significant amounts of damage. And Serika, the reason why we have her up here is because, honestly, if you know anything about Blue Archive and seeing the explosive single target damage, Serika is honestly amazing. Whenever you get her up to 5-star after farming for her shards, she can pump out a lot of damage, especially with the investment into her EX skill, being that she just increases her attack speed. She just gets all that extra attack, and she can just do a lot of damage without needing really much. All you do is just pop her EX skill. You can just wait it, I can't remember how much time, 20 seconds or whatever, and then that's when you pop it again. But you don't need to do her EX skill to get a big burst of damage. She just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting, and so she's a really great unit to use, especially if you're free to play. She'll probably be one of your better options, especially if you don't have Azaza to use, because like I would put her over, honestly, a lot of people on this list just because of how much damage she can pump out when she's fully invested, especially if you're a free to play low spender. All right, and when it comes to Azaza, she's honestly just a little too strong with her EX skill, being that it can go up to 2,000, right? It's just a really strong multiplier. She has the extra damage she gets whenever they have a negative effect on them, basically a debuff or anything like that. She gets extra damage. She has a defense reduction built into her. She is honestly a powerhouse. She ups everyone else's damage, and she can do mad lad damage on her own. She is an amazing unit to have on your team. You could honestly complete a lot of runs with her, especially hardcore, or even go into extreme, especially if you're struggling with her. Find somebody in a club who has a Azaza leveled up, maxed out. You will need it for this, especially if you're wanting to get higher on the leaderboard. It is honestly almost scary how like you can't even really compete with people without having Azaza, especially with the amount that people invested into her. So again, if you watch my club borrowing video, this is where it can show like how having a unit and having the importance of the club can really show, because she will push your damage up significantly. And you can see this now by borrowing someone else's unit, and you can see how much damage she did if you can see how much damage without her you can do, right? And then last and certainly not least, we have Jury up here at the God tier. Jury is going to be the best unit that you could ever have in the game. Honestly, she gives everybody extra HP, so she just helps people live. She gets the boss poisoned. She can remove the boss if you want. She can reduce his attack speed, so he's not even attacking like he used to. And like, I mean, honestly, when you fully invest into her, she's probably going to be the best unit that you could ever have. You know, me being a 5-star, and you know, EX skills maxed out and everything like that, I can definitely attest to that, right? And before I go, I do want to give a special thanks to all of you who are helping make this tier list. It took a lot. I appreciate you guys sticking through. That's going to be Marcus Carlson, Kenshin Hanazawa, Valeria, Ayo Luca Black, Maple, Izu the DJ Potato, Vaughn Sero, Reaper 2127, Ufer Doggo, Donut Eating Doggo, and Yuzuki. I appreciate all you guys pretty much giving all of your input, pretty much making it a non-toxic stream, because honestly, with everyone's different ideas and everyone's opinions, it can become toxic. But I appreciate you guys giving your input, listening to everybody else, and honestly making it a great time. So this is definitely something I want to keep doing with the community in the future, being how great that this one went. And I really appreciate you guys again. But that pretty much concludes this tier list. Here's a full picture. I do have it in the Discord. That's where I'm going to be uploading all of the tier lists. So please join the Discord. Again, that's where you can link up with other people to join clubs. That's where you can also just talk about everything coming out. I have like all of the news put into the Discord. It's a really great place for you to be. Please also like the video. Comment down below what you guys think. Subscribe to the channel. Please, please, please subscribe. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You lucky gamers. Have a good one. Lucky Lux out.